Well, it is the birthday of the late former President Nelson Mandela today, and in celebration of our national icon, we're going to celebrate him throughout our shows today. Well, last night, design auctioneer Stephan Welz and Company hosted an auction with a collection of over 200 lots, estimated to value about 4.7 million rand. And Savo Tufegdzic, who is head of memorabilia at Stephan Welz and Company, joins us now for more. Morning, Savo. Auctions are always interesting things to do, and of course, if an auction is linked with the name Mandela, there must have been a lot of interest. How did it go?
It went very well. It kind of everything that I would have wanted actually happened, and I think that's been the amazing thing. And you know, there's been a lot of talk in the sense of, you know, is Nelson Mandela an investment? Do you buy Nelson Mandela to invest in him? And what I've been trying to get people to understand is you don't. You buy Nelson Mandela to collect. It's not an investment. It's a collection. You're buying it from the heart. And a lot of the items that we did sell last night was bought purely on, you could see that the person really wanted it, which was truly amazing. Yeah.
When we look at some of the items that were bought last night, how were they procured? I'm very curious about that.
You know, sorry, it's different things. Different collectors come. Sometimes the collector will have too many of a certain item. I mean, that goes across, you know, paintings and that. You always want to change. You want to upgrade. You want to refresh your collection.
We've got an item there on the board.
Oh, well, the soccer ball.
Yeah. Now, what was that ball?
It was the FIFA 2010 Jabulani ball that was signed by Nelson Mandela. And that collector bought in about 15 items because he's changing his collections. I think his wife had something to do with it because she didn't want these big chunky things in her house. So he's now downsizing his collection into smaller memorabilia items. So
how much did that go for?
That, I must say, I think it went for 35,000, which surprised me because it was a lot of... I thought that would have gone for 12 or 18,000. I think my estimate was 20. But there were two people in the room that kept wanting it and fighting for it. And obviously they're going to grow, and their wives don't have an issue with space in their house.
Do you have a regular set of auction guests, if you like, attendees for this kind of thing? Or was this like something completely new where you actually didn't know who was going to come and bid?
It's the first time that we've actually had a Mandela auction that's been dedicated just to Nelson Mandela. We did do the auction last year where we had that huge lot, but it was part of another auction. And the memorabilia was actually one lot, and that was the one that Anand Singh bought for R1 million. This was the first dedicated Nelson Mandela auction, and it's something we want to try out. Like I said, I want to start encouraging South Africans to collect. And you know, it's not just about making money, it's about collecting. It's about kind of creating an energy where you move one item to the next. Yes, the hand studies, that was actually, it was bought by a young couple.
Would this be a drawing?
No, the hand studies was an actual palm print, Nelson Mandela's original palm prints. And it was nice to see that a young couple bought it. You know, it's kind of, you asked a question earlier about the kind of clientele that came in. I'd say 90% of the crowd we had last night were new. They were not the regular auction crowd clients, so they didn't even know how auctions operated. You know, so they would say, "What do we do? How do we do this?" And you had to run them through, and it was nice. That was refreshing to see this new breed that are beginning to.
There's the hand studies.
There's the hand studies. It's his original palm prints. Yeah. It's not a copy. It's his original, and that sold last night at 200,000 plus. You know, with premium, I think it was about 240. And that was bought by the young couple.
Wow. You know, the whole auction world, but the collectibles world, it's authenticity, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, they say relics of the true cross, you know, if they put them all together, there would be a forest. So there's a danger here that things that are supposed to be linked to Nelson Mandela, perhaps not, but the association have been forced.
Yes, there is that. And you know, what I'm kind of glad what's happened with the Nelson Mandela memorabilia, and I keep saying this as well, is that he signed so many items, so it doesn't make it scarce and rare. You know, those wonderful words that sellers like to use. It's scarce, it's rare, you should pay for it. What's nice about this is that every South African can actually own a piece of him. And that all of a sudden takes it out of that scarce and rare range, and you start looking at it in a different way. We do authenticate all signatures because, you know, one of the things he did do, he signed a lot. But at the same time, there's a lot of forgeries on his signatures. So anything that we do put on auction has to have a certificate. We do send it to a forensic expert. And, you know, we actually bring that expert in 2 or 3 times to double check his own work at times. If he signed a certificate 5 years ago, we call him back and say, look, you signed this 5 years ago. Are you happy with that? And have him re-verify it. More because at the end of the day, you don't want anyone buying something that is not that they wanted.
When we look at the proceeds and the 2 organizations that will be benefiting from them, tell us more about the 2 organizations.
The one is the Lily's Leaf Trust that was set up by Nick Walpe. I did a charity auction for them a couple of weeks ago. I think it was June 10th on the Rivonia 10 and Rivonia 12. They kind of rebuilding the Lily's Leaf area. They've got an educational trust where they're putting bursaries together for young students and all of that. The other one is the Ndleka Mandela Foundation. She actually donated the hands, and there's a beautiful sketch of Nelson Mandela done by a very young artist called Ruzi. That was one of my favorite pieces. She donated those 2 items and a couple of pictures, and she's formed up with her father's name. She set up a trust called the Ndleka Mandela. Yeah, that for me is most probably one of the most stunning charcoal sketches ever done of him. And I'm so glad that it went to somebody who's actually going to cherish it.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of study
Yes.
in mood terms, isn't
Yes.
it? Because we're so used to people like seeing the jolly, smiling Mandela.
You know that this was done by a 23-year-old art student. This is her first really serious piece, and it's a family friend of Ndleka, and she was there last night, and I was really proud to have met her. And
Savo, you say it's collectors and it's collectibles, but in the end there will be an investment value. So you collect it and because you love it, but they have a value and later can be sold. So what do you expect with the values of these things? Because in the end the value of something is what someone's prepared to pay for it.
well, two things we look at. If I might take it totally off this subject and say the British Guiana stamp that sold in Sotheby's in New York last month for $9.7 million. You're talking 100 million rand for a very small piece of paper. I always believe that if you're going to invest, and it doesn't matter what it is, invest in, diversify. You're going to put some into shares, you're going to put some into property, you're going to put some into collectibles. Because at the end of the day, if one area does fall down, and I'll take a perfect example, there was a stamp collector who, when the recession first hit the world, he was watching on TV, he was watching the banks in the Jersey Islands or somewhere, being closed up, and that was his bank where all his money was sitting in. And he was broke. Woke up one day and he was broke. But he had a really great stamp collection that actually helped him survive over the period. So it's a balancing act, and I truly believe always ask for advice. I'm a firm believer that if you don't know, don't just assume. Don't listen to the first person. Ask for advice. Phone up somebody that knows it. And that includes the Nelson Mandela memorabilia market. Ask somebody who knows it. Yes, there is a base price, and I'm a firm believer we work off a base price. And it shouldn't be too inflated on that base price.
But it's obviously a new market too, so those things are going to find their value.
Well, that was Savo Tufegdzic, head of memorabilia at Stephan Welz and Company.